Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Barbershop Forum, a discussion on wealth, equity, building bridges to prosperity. I'd like to introduce at this time our moderator, DeMarco Morgan. He's a broadcast journalist with CBS here in Los Angeles. DeMarco.
Thank you. Good afternoon. We can do better than that. Good afternoon, everybody. And good evening to all our viewers on the East Coast. It is good to be with you guys. We're going to try and sit in this barber chair for the first time. Clearly, I haven't been in a barbershop for a cut in a while since I lost this hair here. But we like to say whatever is said in the barbershop stays in the barbershop. That is not the case today because we want everyone to walk away with something good, some good knowledge, so we can not only build wealth in our communities, but keep it there and also let it last for generations and generations to come. So I got a lot of important people that I will be introducing to all of you. Many of you know them, have heard of them, read about them, but we don't want anyone to feel left out. So give yourselves a round of applause just for showing up today. All right, first up, Thomas W. Dortch, Doctor, the Chairman, the Honorable. You can give them all kind of titles. So let me tell you a little bit about Thomas Dortch. He is the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of TWD Incorporated and Chairman of 100 Black Men of America Incorporated. Back in 1990, he became the State Director and served as Chief Administrator for United States Senator Sam Nunn. He is a member of Operation Hope Board of Trustees, Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University Board of Trustees, that's FAMU, for those of you who are familiar with HBCUs. He is also Clark Atlanta University Board of Trustee and is chairman of the board, National Coalition on Black Civic Participation. Mr. Dortch has had guest appearances on the Oprah Winfrey Show, Fox News Channel, The O'Reilly Factor, C-SPAN, Talk Back Atlanta, National Press Club, CNN, Good Day Atlanta, and NBC Town Hall meeting. Mr. Dortch is a much sought-after speaker on an international and national level to governmental entities, corporations, and educational institutions. You probably don't know, he also has his own wine. So check it out, look it out, and purchase it as well. And I think a lot of us like to brag and say he's our mentor. He has a million mentees, but I like to tell people I'm at least in the top 2%. So please welcome Thomas Dortch here. Let's give him a round of applause. Okay. Next up is Quincy Amarikwa. I think Quincy tried to outdress us all today. Don't
give it to you wrong.
Quincy is an MLS great and founder of Black Players for Change. He is also the founder and director of strategic partnerships of Black Players for Change, BPC, CEO of Perfect Soccer, Evolve NFTs, and co-managing partner, Leverage Investment Group. He serves as advisor to the BPC Executive Board, fundraising and securing partnerships, and most notably, the Players Coalition, the U.S. Soccer Foundation, Musco Lighting, Adidas, New York Red Bulls, Black Women's Player Collective, New York City FC, MLSPA, Independent Supporters Council, Ethan Airways, and Mayor's Fund. This guy is busy. When not on the soccer field, you see Davis Hall of Fame member Amarikwa invests in furthering his philanthropic, educational, and entrepreneurial ventures. He is on a mission to use soccer as a vehicle to create more than 1 billion self-disciplined, self-sufficient, focused, goal-oriented individuals, and we support you on that.
Thank you very much.
Through his mentality, coaching, and hosting the hashtag Ask a Soccer Pro Show, Amarikwa is creating a new generation of soccerpreneurs. Welcome, Quincy.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
This time, please welcome Ashley Bell to the stage.
Peace. Ashley. Good to see you, brother. Thank you.
Ashley hit that smooth walk as soon as he got on the stage. I saw it there. He is the co-founder of the National Black Bank Foundation. He is a partner at Denton's LLP, the world's largest law firm, and leveraging his extensive experience with both the public and private sectors, Ashley develops solutions to effectively bridge the intersection of business, law, and government. Ashley serves as the general counsel for the National Black Bank Foundation and the $250 million Black Bank Fund, and in this role facilitated the refinance of the construction loan for the Emory Sports Medicine Complex with a syndicate of Black-owned banks. Now, the $35 million loan marks the first time a professional sports franchise has had a significant loan underwritten exclusively by black banks. We thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, brother.
Derek Higgins, in town from D.C. I told him D.C. likes to claim that they are the real chocolate city. That's what they say. Derek is the CEO of Global Sports Business Academy and senior advisor to the president of Washington football team. In the fall of 2020, Derek was asked to serve as advisor to the first black NFL team president, Jason Wright, as he began efforts to create a new path for the franchise. After serving as the sports segment lead for President Obama's My Brother's Keeper initiative from its inception in 2014 until President Obama's departure from office, Derek founded Global Sports Business Academy, an education delivery unit designed to create pathways for kids of color to break into and succeed as leaders in the sports and entertainment business. Derek serves as faculty for Georgetown University's sports industry management program, along with holding an instructor role at Stanford University, while advising a number of startups in the sports media space. Previously, Derek served as in-house business affairs counsel for the National Football League and served as general manager of AOL's sports channel and served as managing director for the Wharton School's Wharton Sports Business Initiative. You are somebody. Everybody put your hands together for Derek. And last but not least, my man, Sola Winley. Sola is MLS EVP and Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. Sola's 27-year career includes 10 years with the National Football League, A&E Television Networks, and leading his own strategic and management consulting firm. When I saw 27 years, he told me he started when he was age 5, so we'll let you get away with that, brother. As the founder and principal of Brown Angel Advisors and Provision Consulting Incorporated, he partnered with CEOs and advised management on leadership and organizational development, executive coaching, diversity and inclusion, and corporate communications across a range of industries. Let's give our panelists a round of applause, and thanks to you for this. And of course, before we get started, we want to bring you greetings now by inviting Don Garber, the commissioner of Major League Soccer. I think we should all rise and give him a round of applause.
Thanks very much, folks. It's really, really great to be here. I want to welcome everybody that's here at the Coliseum, but also those of you that are joining via our live stream. You know, this is a very special event for us. We have our All-Star game coming up tomorrow, which in and of itself is unique. It's the first time that any professional sports league has played an All-Star game against another league in the midseason. So it's not a matter of our players playing each other. It's about our players playing against the best players from Mexico. And there's something really special about that when you think about all the implications about what this game means to all the things that are going on in our country. And when we put these kind of games together, it's not just about a celebration of a sporting event. It's about how could you take the influence, the power of these kinds of activities and do something like we're doing today. This is a very, very special opportunity for our league to show our commitment to diversity, to equity, and to inclusion. And there's so many people that I want to thank. First, DeMarco, thank you.
Thank you.
You can always tell when these moderators have that on-air TV experience because it's like you've been doing it since you were 5 years old. So we really appreciate all of that.
Thank you.
You know, in October of 2020, our league made a commitment to sort of support this idea that when sports are at its best, it combines the power and influence of our players and our clubs and our owners and all the resources that we have to try to make a difference in communities. And when you're in the soccer business, a game that comes from the grassroots and is so global and is the beautiful game, we've thought that we need to do things perhaps a little bit different when we got very focused on creating a diversity, equity, and inclusion area for our league. I want to give a great shout out to Sola, who I've known for many, many years, in a short period of time, has taken this area and has led in ways that I think is a banner for all of professional sports. So we're really pleased and proud and honored to everything that you're doing. And in less than a year, we, with Sola's leadership, decided it's not just about what the league office can do. We've got to get our owners together and have them participate in a committee. along with the black Players for Change. And Quincy, to your vision and leadership for creating that organization, and to Justin Morrow, who is sitting somewhere, their executive director, by the way, active player for Toronto FC, Justin Morrow. And the group of players came together with our owners, with representatives of SCORE, and I want to give a shout out to Kobe Jones. Kobe? Los Angeles Kobe Jones representing SCORE. Kobe? Ray Gaddis sitting next to Kobe, recently retired Philadelphia Union player, Ray Gaddis. Thank you for joining us. And I want to give a shout out to Ollie Curtis. Ollie Curtis representing what we like to think of as the pro pathway for players who, great player for Duke, came off the college field, played in Major League Soccer for 10 plus years, then went into the league office into a training program, was the general manager of the New York Red Bulls, and now currently general manager of Toronto FC, and doing a great job, Ollie, showing what leadership can be on and off the field. And I think just as it relates to this area, before I introduce some owners, Jamil Northcutt. Jamil, if you can give a wave and a shout out. Jamil came to us from the NCAA and the National Football League, and Jamil is running our player engagement area. But more importantly than that, while we were putting together this vision as to what we needed to do as a league to be on our front foot in this important area, Jamil, your leadership and your courage, your strength and conviction guiding us in the right direction got us to where we are today. So thank you very much, Jamil. There are a couple of owners that have joined this committee, and I want to recognize two of them. Marty Edelman. Where's Marty? Somewhere in the back somewhere. Marty, very quietly. Marty Edelman, who will always sort of be in the background. Marty Edelman was not just the board representative in New York City FC, he's on the board of Manchester City. He has been a leader in our industry for decades and decades and decades, more than Marty wants to admit. But very importantly, he's the co-chair along with Sola. It's the only committee that we have in Major League Soccer where we have one of our employees co-chairing a committee with a representative of our ownership group. And Marty's involvement in this started as an advisor back in the day, Marty. I mean, it's got to be 60 years ago or so, where Marty was an advisor to Jackie Robinson and his wife, and worked with the family to start the Jackie Robinson Foundation and the Jackie Robinson Museum down in downtown Manhattan. So thank you, Marty, for your leadership. We also have another owner here that is part of the committee, John Ingram, and Mary Cavaro, who sits on our board. John, who is from Nashville, Tennessee, and is the owner of our new team in Nashville. And John is one of these guys also leading with his front foot, building a stadium in downtown Nashville. Very importantly, building a training facility and an academy in Nashville, led by a black contracting company and a black architect. Not a MBE that got a piece of a big business, but leading the business and hiring whatever companies they need to hire to get the job done. So thank you very, very much. And lastly, on the thing, I'm sorry to take so much time because it's really messing up the whole forum show. So commissioner prerogative. The last person I want to represent, I'm sure I forgot somebody, and if that happens, please forgive me. Ed Foster Simeone. Ed, if you could raise your hand. Ed is the head of the United States Soccer Foundation. The Soccer Foundation was started as a corpus right after the 1994 World Cup. All that money that was generated after the World Cup was put into a fund, and that fund is now doing Soccer for Success all over the country, bringing soccer to the inner city schools. But very importantly, in partnership with the U.S. Soccer Foundation, Major League Soccer has built 600 mini pitches in the inner cities throughout the United States. And Ed, thanks for your leadership on that, along with Sticks, leading the Sticks Watts Foundation. We inaugurated a new field in South Central yesterday, so I thank you for your leadership. So this is a session on wealth equity. When Sola came into this job, he said, every league goes out and tries to do things where they're giving money away. We have to do things that the money that we're giving away is empowering those people to go out and build an opportunity for themselves. And that opportunity is what today is all about, and that's what you all are going to speak about. And there's so many people that have been a big part of it. I want to thank all of the columnists, the panelists who are being here today, so that we could learn, so that our league, our sport, and the sports industry itself could hear from you about things that we can do to make a difference in communities. When that power of leagues can collide and align with those of you who can tell us and teach us how to do it better and make an impact, then we're going to be the kind of sports league that we want to be, and we couldn't do it without you. So many other thank yous, and Show, if I missed anybody,
You're good.
do it for me.
You're good.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
And Matt Methune from Minnesota United. There's one guy that I forgot. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garber. We appreciate that a lot. And I want to give a shout out to Dr. Pickard. He unfortunately could not be with us today, but we're sending our support and our prayers to him and hoping that he gets well. So again, thank you. And again, thank you. Thank you to everybody that he mentioned and for all that you're doing. And I love to hear what you're doing in Nashville. So we appreciate that personally. Appreciate that. We're going to talk about, as the commissioner mentioned, wealth equity and also building bridges to prosperity. And before we start with the questions, I want to give each panelist 90 seconds, roughly a little over 2 minutes, to just sort of set a goal for what you want the people here and also the viewers who are tuning in our streaming service, what you want them to walk away with, what your hope is that they will walk away from today with this conversation. We'll start with you, Chairman.
I want to thank the commissioner and the phenomenal team that we've had the opportunity to work with, and the partnership with MLS and the 100 Black Men of America. I'll call out my team here because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the leadership of the 100 throughout the country and several chapters here. We're engaged and involved in communities, but what the 100 does, and we hope others will do, is don't go to communities just where they're doing fine and you feel comfortable and safe, but by the grace of God, we could be in those communities. And so from this conversation, we hope we can get individuals who will walk away committed to mentoring, understand that we can make a difference, mentoring does work, but also understand until we address the root causes. We can do Band-Aid work, but until we address the problem of poverty and the divide in this nation, and that's so important, we're not going to change what's going on in here, in this country, and the challenges that we have. So we hope that people will be engaged, will walk away, and will be committed to helping those, the least of these, who don't have the support, but at the same time being beacons of what we can do working together. And so I think that's the part, and understand at the end of the day, it's not about giving, it's about investing for great returns for communities, and more importantly, for the young people in our communities. That's so critical.
All right, Quincy.
Love that. Yeah. Thanks to everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak. I'm looking forward to learning more from everybody up here, as well as sharing a bit of my personal experience, as well as the experience I've gained over my time working with BPC. Some amazing individuals. Shout out Justin for all the work that he's been doing, helping us with this. Huge shout out to Serena, my wife, who is amazing. Shout out to my son, Sir, who just turned 4 today. It's his birthday, so I'm looking forward to hopefully having a conversation with everybody here today that can kind of set a standard of accountability, an example for him and his brother to look to, and hopefully eventual sister, right? As a moment in time where we have an opportunity to actually not only address the issues that have been happening, but put in place solutions that will result in tangible change. I wouldn't want to look back on this time and this opportunity, and I know it's been difficult times for everybody at every level, especially this last year. But from this, I think great can come, and that comes from us being open to having dialogue with individuals who might have differing opinions, differing belief systems, differing approaches for accomplishing the end goal, which is an equitable, safe space for everybody to have access, if so they choose. I think that's what we really want. We want more for those who come after us than we had for ourselves, and we want those who come after us to understand the lessons learned were definitely learned hard, right? So I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to learning from everybody here on the panel today.
It's good to have you here. Ashley.
Thank you. You know, he brought up a lot of good points. You know, I'm from Gainesville, Georgia, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say I know I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for the people who came before me. Tommy Dortch is one of those people. He's from right up the road. We both small town country boys. You know, but if it wasn't for Tommy and an example that he was able to set in public service and in private service, and our brother Pickard, who couldn't be here today, is the first person I call when I can't figure out how to solve a problem, I got to figure out my next move. I could not be here in this seat if it wasn't for these brothers. So what I hope we get from this is that the next generation picks up that mantle and tries to make this road a little bit wider, a little bit smoother for whoever comes next. My conversation today, I hope, will be around values with you. We all have a lot of values that we talk about, but we want to talk about the actions behind those values. I work with the National Black Bank Foundation. Our team is in the back here. We represent the interests of the 18 remaining black banks in this country. And what we hope today we get a chance to talk about is banking your values. We all have a lot of great things to say in a post-George Floyd world about what social equity means and what impact means. But we live in a community, in the black community, where our money stays in our community for 2 hours. And it stays in our community for 2 hours because we don't have people putting money in the institutions that circulate wealth. You have to be thinking about, are you banking your values? If you say you will support impact, does your money, where you put it, does that reflect that? So let's have a conversation about inclusion, but let's also have a conversation about how our values match our actions.
Very good. All right, Derek?
First of all, I want to say how excited I am for the future of MLS. And here we are in this amazing, beautiful, historic setting in Los Angeles for All-Star. And I look at what a former colleague of mine, Commissioner Don Garber, back to our 20 plus years when we used to work at the NFL together, has done with his team in this league over the last so many years. And I'm so excited to be in this moment today where the MLS seems to be taking a step forward in terms of how it can grow and bring others into the conversation and make an impact in society more than they even have in the past. Having my other good friend Sola Winley at the helm of DEI, and the reason why we have this particular group setting here today, I'm just so proud of them and shepherding this forward and bringing us here today. So just another, if we could, round of applause for Sola and the commissioner today. It's exciting. For me, I think the big picture of what I certainly want to get across is every single one of us, not just those of us on this stage here today, not just the commissioner, every single one of us in this audience today, every single person that is watching this broadcast right now, those that will watch it in the future, we all can have an impact. There's no single person that doesn't have the opportunity to have generational, long-lasting impact in our community. Whether it is a decision to hire a black or brown contractor that will work on a venue project that can change a community, whether it's mentoring a young person and changing the trajectory of their careers where they then can impact hundreds or thousands more just by themselves and their actions. In individual decisions that we make every day, we can impact thousands of people. And I just want everyone to be reminded that it doesn't have to be a major event like this with all the cameras. It doesn't have to be major corporations every single day. We each have the opportunity to make the impact, and I hope that we do.
All right, Sola.
First, I want to welcome everybody and thank everybody for being here, Commissioner, for giving me the opportunity really to be an inspiration to bring people together. Today is not possible without a lot of work of everybody here on this panel and in this room. And so for me, it's an honor just to be able to be on the stage with everybody, to be able to bring people together for this conversation. So what I would like for us to be able to take away from today is for all of us to know that we all come from someplace, that wherever we come from has led us to this point in time. There's no one who is on this stage who is not intended to be here. There's no one who's in the audience listening who's not intended to hear this conversation. There's no one who's listening on broadcast who's not intended to hear the message of what we're going to talk about today. The title of today's panel is Building Bridges. Bridges might be something physical, but it also might be the energy that we share with one another, the hand that we extend to one another, the intentionality that we put into the work that we do. So this was an intentional moment in time to bring together thinkers and doers, leaders in the space who are making impact in the communities that we serve. And this is not just about leaving things behind. This is about what we're going to do to move our country forward, our business forward, and all of us have a role to play in that. So I appreciate everybody coming out today, being part of the conversation, and hopefully being inspired by what we're able to accomplish together. So thank you.
All right, thank you. So before we start questions, just some housekeeping notes for you. 30 minutes from now, we'll open up the floor and we'll take questions from you, and as well as our viewers who are tuning in. You can use the hashtag Together There Will Be Change. Also, if you've been taking pictures or selfies, use the hashtag for it so we can use it. But again, it's hashtag Together There Will Be Change, and we'll also choose some questions if you post them on Twitter, and we'll get that to you. So the first question and the first topic that I want to talk about is mentoring, the importance of the role that mentoring plays in changing the financial landscape. We talk about it all the time in the barbershops. You see some of our friends who we've grown up with who make it to the NFL, who make it to the NBA, who make it to the soccer league. And one minute they have these big, huge homes, they're balling, these big chains, shoes, you name it. And then they're broke 2-3 years later. How do we change that? What's the mentality? How do we get into that and say, and not just for the ball players, but I know people who have become successful attorneys and doctors, and they get it and they don't know how to manage their money.
Well, I'll start. And I couldn't do it without asking first, all of the members of the 100 that are here. I have several presidents from Long Beach and LA and Orange County and from Bay Area and all, but all of my presidents and members of the organization, please stand quickly, because these are the people who do the work every day in the 100. And joining us is the national president for the Coalition of 100 Black Women, Virginia Harris, who's my sister, who is phenomenal in Virginia. We thank you. Mentoring is it. We have an entrepreneurship program in mentoring we run for years. Creating that next generation. I own 6 businesses. I'm in 14 states, a little bit north of 300 employees, but I spent 22 years in public service until I got a real job. I created it. And I worked for one of the most powerful senators in Congress in history, Sam Nunn. But we understand that in our community, and I think Ashley talked about it, we make money and it goes out. 1.3 trillion plus a year. It's what we earn in our community, and our Latina, Hispanic brothers do anywhere from 1.3 to 1.5. But economically, we would be probably the 9th richest nation in the world. But we've got to quit begging for what we need and spending our money on what we want. We gotta use and invest that money, and we teach our young people about investing, saving, and you would be amazed at these young middle school young people who are so phenomenal. I had a group called Young Men of Distinction. These young folks, our money managers taught them how to invest. For 4 consecutive years, they had 20% plus return on their investment. Wow. They could sit and talk with anybody, the late Maynard Jackson and those about investing. First, we've got to understand the importance of mentoring, not just young people, but our community, because they can learn. And these young people are like sponges. And in our chapters, I want to salute all of the men of the 100 around this country. We have over 125,000 young people in our mentoring program. We're in Africa, England, Caribbean islands, and all throughout the U.S. But mentoring is the key. I was mentored growing up, and that's in my book. That's why I talked about the barbershop. I grew up in a segregated community up the road from Gainesville, Toccoa, Georgia, in 1968, last segregated class in my city. But we would go to the barbershop, and even the elders, they knew us. And they said, boy, you're Tom's son. And they spilled into us, but they would have these phrases, every dog knows his bone, and you make your bed hard, you got to sleep in it. We learned a lot from folks, and they didn't have PhDs or didn't have college degrees. They had common sense. And so what we're doing now is that we've got to work with our young men and young women and help create that next generation of leaders, entrepreneurs. I give 1/3 of all the money I make back to the community. I never thought I'd make the kind of money I made, because I told folks I'd never make the money my father made. He was an entrepreneur. But I've done north of 125 million since I went into business, and just signed another $35 million contract. I never imagined that, but if I had known that before, someone had taught me that, as much as I love, and Sam Nunn's been a great mentor, I wouldn't have been in the U.S. Senate for 16 years.
Tommy, could I build on a point that you said earlier? If I could jump in just for a moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I talked to so many people about mentorship, and there are a number of people I talked to said, I don't know if I have the information to give and to serve as a mentor. And I really think that it really starts with someone who has perhaps more knowledge, more experience, more perspective on certain matters than someone else. And that can sit in a number of different vantage points. I think in a perfect world, mentorship starts at home. And I'm so fortunate, from Washington, D.C., raised by a college professor, Howard University, shout out to HBCUs, an HU, Howard University college professor, and he was my first mentor. I have an older brother who went to an Ivy League school, went to Brown University. For me, having those two mentors, I just had to be a sponge for them, and not mess up, quite frankly, right? And I sit here today because of them primarily, and following their lead. But regardless of what lot you sit in life and where you start, mentors can have a huge impact. DeMarco started with talking about athletes. I've got a friend who played professional basketball, some may have heard of, named Grant Hill. And Grant and I went to school together at Duke. His mother has been a mentor to me since I was an undergrad. But we talk about the difference between how certain athletes or former athletes take care of their money or their affairs. His parents, between Calvin and Janet, put mentors in front of him at an early age, the Dr. J's, the Roger Staubachs, those that taught him early on. And so now we see him as, as a part owner of an NBA franchise and doing so many different things. Regardless of where you start, you can use mentors. So many of us in the professional community can mentor young people. And I think that if we could take the opportunity to start with kids as early as possible, it's not necessarily about professional advice early on. Sometimes it's about attitude. Sometimes it's teaching them what they have as opportunities in front of them, whether that's academically or otherwise, just to have them as focused as possible to get them on a path towards their future. And then from a professional standpoint, later on, it can be opening doors, it can be encouraging them to pursue things that maybe they didn't think were possible. I had the fortune of having dinner last night with a mentee of mine, 26 years old. 10 years ago, she was one of the first students in a program that I started at Wharton, a high school program to teach kids about sports and entertainment business that I continue today. She was 16 years old. A year later, focused on Qatar, and Ed was there. We were in Doha in 2012. We took a number of high school students as well as Wharton undergrads to Doha as student ambassadors. I chose her as one of those students. She goes on to Spelman, Howard Law School, and 2 weeks ago she started at CAA, right? And so it's a path that starts, some time ago, and you need mentors to help you through that journey. And I know that she will turn around now that she's at one of the biggest global, entertainment and sports marketing agencies in the world, and she'll turn that around and she will bring other people along with her. So I think regardless of where you start and where you sit, you can have impact.
I think listening to both of you, and I appreciate both of your perspectives, that it takes one person to have an impact in somebody's life, right? Whether you run a big organization or whether you just extend a helping hand. My son is in the audience today, 17 years old. When I was 17, I didn't have a chance to listen to these type of conversations. I wanted him to come out to LA to enjoy the All-Star game for sure, but really to have an opportunity to sit and to learn and to soak up the energy and the wisdom and the knowledge for people who came before him. And I share with Miles often that your dreams should reach to the stars and beyond. but your knees must stay on the ground and your feet must stay on the ground. That you should walk through life with a sense of humility. Always be respectful for that which you have, and extend a hand to those who come beside you. That you're not special in life, you're unique, and that you have your own unique gifts and your own unique talents. And so each of us is a mentor in our own way. Right? We're talking about the concept of wealth. When we look at wealth, we're really looking at it from a financial perspective. Wealth is a broad concept for us to make sure that we understand. The value of a dollar and what we do with a dollar. We can all are fortunate and sit here from a place of privilege to be able to have this conversation. Most of us can afford to buy the things that we want to buy. Most of us are not limited on material wealth. But there's an energy and a spiritual wealth that we all bring to the table to create a sense and a community. One of our purpose statements for Major League Soccer is to build what we call a beloved soccer community. That word is very intentional. A community where we invite people in from a spirit of kindness. Kindness is not weakness. Kindness is good for business. If you're kind to people, if you extend a hand to people, if you invite people in, then they'll want to do business with you. That just makes good sense. And so it's really, you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, brother. I want to hit on that wealth concept because I think you're right. You know, Brother Dortch mentioned he made $125 million, but the reality is, Brother Dortch is rich because he's had 3 brothers walk up here saying he mentored them.
Right.
And that wasn't orchestrated. We all didn't get together and say, we're going to be on stage today with Brother Dortch. That's just because he's touched so many people. Mm-hmm. When I started my mentor program, I was 19. I didn't know anything. But what I realized is that is what wealth is.
Right.
Wealth is being able to share what you have and get a return, right? That return is knowing that you made this world better, that you helped someone out who needed help, that you was able to share what you had with someone who needed it. So as we talk about this mentoring, it's not about how old you are. It's not about, don't wait till you go to Ivy League schools. Don't wait till you get rich. You can do it right now because if each one of us took one of us, reached one of us, then we could have the impact that we're going to talk about today. But it starts with everyone knowing what your value is. And how do you multiply that value?
And I'm glad you talked about that because I was actually going to come to you next.
Yeah.
When you talk about sharing, I'm grateful for 100 Black Men as well. I was in the mentoring program in middle school. I'm 42 years old, so it did a little something. It worked out for me. But when you talk about sharing, my parents made sure that I was surrounded by men who look like you guys and by the 100 Black Men. What about the kids who don't have that opportunity or who don't have parents who, you know, would basically even know what to do when it comes to teaching financial literacy? Those who work in 2 and 3 and 4 jobs.
Yeah.
I taught at Morehouse, I taught at Spelman, I taught at Clark. I had a lot of kids who couldn't even manage the refund check that we get. You know, you get your refund check in school and then you blow it literally in a week. They can't manage money, and it's not their fault. I don't like to blame them because they say you're not responsible for what you have.
We are what we see. You know, if you don't see it, you can't be it, right? So when I started my nonprofit, Generation Inspirations, just for kids, we picked all the minority professionals that sat at a desk every day. Mm-hmm. You know, you go to work, you made it. You got from college, you didn't have to go to the factory, you could sit at a desk, you did something. You come back home to Gainesville, we took everybody and said, give us 3 hours a week to give to a young person. And it wasn't really giving it to a young person, it was giving it to their parents. Mm-hmm. You got parents that work 3 shifts, 3rd shift. You got parents that don't have time to be there when their kids get home. We volunteered to call their teachers, see how they were doing. Ask the parents, how could we be helpful? We all have to work together to fill in the gaps because the gaps are going to be there, and that's not that kid's fault. But it's our fault if we know it's there and we say that we're too busy, and we're only too busy because we don't realize how much wealth we will gain from that investment, more than you will ever gain in stocks or banks or anything, by being the person who invests in the next generation.
Hey, Quincy, you wanted to weigh in?
Yeah, I like the original question in terms of using professional athletes and blowing the check, as well as tying it to mentorship, what wealth is, what equity is, right? I think at the simplest level for kids or athletes, you have to make it cool. You have to make it like, this panel's amazing. The wealth of knowledge and experience up here is amazing. But younger generation doesn't necessarily think it's cool to listen to older individuals who have experience and know what they're talking about, yap on and on about this, that, and the other, and they'll say it to your face, and maybe they regret those decisions later in life when they get beat up by the real world a little bit, right? But that's how we learn the tough lessons the hard way. So I think first and foremost, it's figuring out how to connect and resonate with those kids so that they're seeing that ownership is cool. Hodling, right? That's the new crypto. People are getting understanding of the crypto area and how that is in terms of investing. Holding on for the long term, right? That builds equity. Equity is an experience that you can tap into over time. It's trust. Trust is earned through actions, which sounds very in alignment with everybody in terms of values. And how do you bank those values? Well, it's a deposit. And it's a language. And it's a language gap that we need to fill. And it's cultural. It's all interconnected, because at the end of the day, we're human, right? And some of us don't have access to capital, access to equity, access to lines of credit, because they don't have the history of trust established for someone to look in a moment's notice and give a line of credit at favorable interest rates. So platforms like this, conversations like this, are an opportunity to showcase our understanding, but also understand that we don't know everything, and we're not always going to know everything. We're going to make mistakes, but through mistakes gives us opportunity. Opportunity to have conversations, opportunity to invest in each other, opportunity to create what we've yet to see. So I agree with the ideology of you can't be what you can't see, but a lot of these platforms, a lot of these opportunities that lay before us are industries and realms we've yet to understand. For instance, if we went back just 15 years and said, hey, people are going to get into strangers' cars, no problem, and they're going to drive them somewhere else that's going to be cheaper than the taxi cab industry. Or I'm going to rent out my couch for $10 a night to generate some revenue for myself. I mean, the opportunity that young people have in front of their face in terms of infrastructure, because I really think that's really what it is. How could they know otherwise, because they were born into it? And from us sitting in our position, I happen to be born just before the internet boom and all that. I don't know. I'm sure.
Right before.
Yeah, exactly. Right before. I just made it, right? So I don't know if your son knows the sound that you had to listen to when you had to log into the internet. Right? Just sitting there.
He doesn't know that.
Exactly. Right. That experience, when now reflected upon, gave me an opportunity to have appreciation, because I had to invest time to receive knowledge. And I was fortunate enough to not know that the internet wasn't supposed to just be used as a tool to educate myself. I just thought I was behind on everything. So I was doing everything I could to stay up to date and up to speed. And when I look back on what technology is affording us, it's an opportunity to bridge that gap across generations. So
Quincy, I think Quincy.
And Quincy, you hit the nail on the nail on the head. But in the 100, what we've understood, our theme, which was developed in 1994, the first year I came in as national chair, is what they see is what they'll be. And we have to understand our young people grow up in communities, and some of them, all they see is people who are hard down on their luck. They may see drug dealers, they may see people who are unemployed, but because they're there, it doesn't mean we leave them there.
Yes.
And we go into these communities to give them positive images, and we've had chapters where young people have never really been out of their neighborhood. And we've taken them out, but also explained to them the importance of reinvesting back at home. But what we've incorporated is we have a collegiate 100. I have 69 chapters. And so the young people in college help us do mentoring. We do partnership. We mentor them. They work with us. We have a group called the Emerging 100, which are young professionals, 25 to 35, that we have. But the important thing is we teach young people that they have to depend on each other. Even in our teaching in the classroom, we tell them, if you're successful but your colleagues aren't successful, you're failing. So getting them to understand that they have to work together and work to ensure that they're all leaving together and working hand in hand. But mentoring, again, is a key. But you don't have to have a college degree. You don't even have to have a high school diploma to be a mentor, because a mentor is a giver of good advice, a loving and caring individual who's willing to invest that time to help young people. So we don't want anybody to think you got to have some great job title to be a successful mentor, but if you're caring and want to see young people succeed, if you want to work in there, and I give a shout out to parents. Some parents do work 2 and 3 jobs, and I get tired of hearing people talk about they're in a broken home. A broken home is a home without love. You can have a mother and father. They can be the richest people in the world and some of the most dysfunctional families, and we make people feel that it's wrong. And we think that if a child is in a family with only one parent, if that mother or that father loves that child to death, that is a good home.
That's right.
And so what we have to do as adults, we've got to dispel those myths, but we still got to make sure young people believe, and we have to encourage and know that we're investing in them. But the conversation has been great, but I don't want anybody to leave, but those listening, they can be mentors. But they've got to be willing to engage and be involved and understand they're not the surrogate father, they're not the replacement father, mother, whatever. They're there to help that child succeed. And if we do that, we're going to change the whole paradigm of America, and that's important.
And the chairman knows something about mentoring. He actually wrote a book about it. So
Yeah,
we appreciate that. You talked about the dollar earlier, and I'll talk to you guys as well. I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We were recently in the news a couple of months ago for the Tulsa race massacre that happened in 1921. I'm embarrassed because I knew nothing about Black Wall Street until I went out to school at Jackson State University, and I had a professor who talked about the African Americans in my community who were rich and wealthy and made all this money. And I'm like, Tulsa, where I'm from? So I mention that to say, you know, studies say that the average lifespan of the dollar is approximately 28 days in the Asian communities, 19 days in the Jewish communities, 17 days in white communities, and just 6 hours. 6 hours in black communities. What strategies can be used to keep the dollars earned by blacks in the black community? Because it turned over 19 times in Tulsa in the early 1900s.
Well, you have to be intentional first.
Right.
In all 6 of my businesses, first priority goes to people in my community, because I know we're going to create jobs in the community. In positions where I've been, I chaired the Fulton DeKalb Hospital Authority that owns Grady Health System, 5th largest safety net hospital in the nation. And we had a policy, if we're going to invest money, we're going to start with our community. It doesn't make any sense to be in power and you don't use that power to move the community. That's not racism. That's about how do you build the communities that are going to make a difference. I designed the diversity and inclusion programs for Hartsfield-Jackson when we did the $5.3 billion expansion. We did $1.6 billion with mainly African-American owned businesses, thanks to Maynard Jackson, who set the stage about us working together. But we have to be intentional. And then it kills me that someone will go to a black business, have a bad experience, and say, I'm never going back to that business. But you go to a white-owned business, and you forgive them and say it's okay, and you go back and spend your money. Well, I take the time to spend time with those businesses and say, look, I'm a customer. I don't like what I had. I'm coming back, but I want some improvements. Because if you're in Atlanta and you're going to McDonald's in Buckhead, which is the most affluent neighborhood, and then you go to Bankhead, which is was one of the most challenging communities, they changed it. I expect the same service, and we have to expect the service, but we have to teach. And I will teach young people. If I go in and they say, what you want? I take the time to educate that young person. That's where we fail. And we get angry as opposed to understanding. If we don't do it in our community, if we don't reinvest in our community, if we don't spend with our businesses, you talk about Oklahoma, we had Sweet Auburn. Auburn Avenue was downtown Atlanta. That's where the world headquarters of 100 is. You had Raleigh-Durham, which also was another Wall Street area. You got Beale Street in Memphis. We didn't just come in the money. We've been in the money. We were there, but then we forgot customer service, and people started saying to our folks, oh, they're bad businesses. But the bottom line to that is if we don't do it intentional, you can't blame others for the things that we can and must do for ourselves. And we want to blame everybody else, but we don't spend our money with our folks. We don't hire our people. I mean, first of all, I want you to be good, but I'm going to give an opportunity. I even work with a lot of people who've been formerly incarcerated. But if you don't give them a second chance, how are they going to make it? They're going to go back into crime. So we need to take a look at ourselves and what we do and how we do it. And we can't blame anybody else if we aren't doing it ourselves.
And real quick, in 2 minutes, because you mentioned Maynard Jackson, the first African-American mayor for the city of Atlanta, can you talk about how he is practically responsible for why African-Americans are so wealthy in that city?
We're the only city in the nation. Atlanta is the only city in the nation that has a designated, required percentage of inclusion. Right now, it's 41% of all work done at our airport has to be African-American people of color. Maynard Jackson refused to let them build a new airport until the business community agreed that they were going to have inclusion. And they said, no, we're not going to do it. We waited over a year before they came back and the business community said, Mr. Mayor, okay. And we built a new airport. 25% of that new airport was built mainly with African-American businesses like never before. Today, in our city, you know, we have had, wow, that was 1973. To this day, we have a mandated inclusion. Folks are going to talk about, well, a set aside. Well, my attitude and what Maynard said is, you know, if we get 25%, you got a 75% set aside for white business owners. And so that's the reality. When I worked for the Senate, we did a 5% goal for defense procurement. Everybody else tried to strike it down and say, I'm none. We educated him. He said, well, you got a 95% set aside. Why are you complaining about 5%? We have to mandate, we have to hold people accountable. But what Maynard did, which was so good, he got black business owners together and said, it doesn't matter whether your name is first, second, or last, your percentage is the same. And when we began to quit being selfish and worrying about who's going to get more, that's when we succeed. But Maynard Jackson set the stage. And then it was affirmative action. And affirmative action was a positive action to a negative action. And then folks didn't like that. And then now we got diversity and inclusion. But at the end of the day, it's about opening the doors of opportunity across the board. We pay our taxes, we work, and everybody should have equal opportunity.
And tell me, I want to jump on what you were saying, brother, about that time as well. When we talk about the time that the dollar stays in a community, well, if you don't have any way to put the dollar when you make it, think about it. If you're a soccer player, football player, you make $1 million, and you have to put your money in a white bank across town, it's gone right then. That's the 6 hours right there. It's gone. 20 years ago, we had twice as many black banks as we do now. 20 years ago. 20 years before that, you had twice as many. We've had over 137 black banks in this country at one time, and now we're down to 18. But I'm not going to let everybody else off the hook. Yeah, black people, we got a responsibility. It's not just on us, okay? Because we didn't put ourselves in this situation.
So why are we not going to black-owned banks?
Well, that's the thing. Black-owned banks have disappeared because every time America economically catches a cold, black people catch pneumonia. We all know that. We have communities that we're the first to get fired and the last to get hired. So every time your black bank, which holds your church's money, your black business's money, and the economy takes a dive, you can't go support your brother who's got a black business. Your church isn't getting as much money, and the bank that holds all that comes tumbling down. So what we have to do to create more black banks is we cannot do it alone. It's going to take corporations of goodwill, people who have great credit, saying, you know what, when I refinance my house, when I refinance my factory, I'm going to give a black bank a chance to compete for my business. But the problem is when people think about black banks, it's the black part. Same stigma that goes to the black bank goes to the black business. It's not big enough. I don't get the best service. I don't think I can get what I want from them. But until we can get past that black part and support a black bank and a black business, if you are not black, then we won't really see equity. Ask yourself, if you have your money somewhere right now, have you let a minority bank compete for your business? Not even give it to them. Have you even asked, do you have services that I can have? If you do that, they won't win your business every time. But the times that they do can change a generation.
Right. DeMarco, if I could add on what Ashley's saying, you know, you mentioned earlier about Tulsa, right, and not knowing about the history of it. And I think that there's a real knowledge gap. I think that there's a knowledge gap that black banks can be competitive with larger white institutions. And that's part of why we're having the conversation today, so that we can elevate the understanding about what's possible. Quincy talked about and used a very powerful word, this word of access. Right? Who are we giving access to? Right? So those of us who are in positions of power, those of us who are in positions of influence, we have the ability to make intentional choices with the decisions that we make. So we're talking about, well, where do we put our dollar? How are we going to choose to spend it? Well, first we have to know what our options are, right? So today, hopefully from the conversation, we're aware, oh, there are 18 black banks that can potentially compete with the larger public institutions. That's information that perhaps wasn't known before we're having this conversation today. So a part of what we're doing is knowledge sharing, right? A part of what Ashley is talking about is make sure that you take the time to understand that there are opportunities beyond what you currently know about. So right now, Major League Soccer is in discussions with the National Black Foundation to talk about what's possible. What are some strategic opportunities that we can have to build businesses together? Because if we're able to take a leadership role in this space, then hopefully others will follow, right? Not because it's the charitable thing to do, but because it makes good sense and it's good business.
So real quick, and speaking of banks and giving back, when I worked in Milwaukee for ABC, Legacy Bank was a black-owned bank. Two sisters owned the bank, and it
closed.
Went under. Yeah, it closed down. Yeah. But I remember they were responsible for so many loans, like for black-owned restaurants and businesses and stuff. They were really trying to give back to the community, but so many people were also defaulting on their loans because of lack of financial literacy. MLS, what role are you guys playing when it comes to educating people?
So well, hopefully we talked about some of that today. So this is, and I want to give a thanks to not just the diversity, equity, inclusion team that has put this event together, but we have colleagues back in New York as well who are here today from our MLS WORKS team who have been very helpful in organizing this, as well as BPC, Quincy and Justin, and their vision for making sure that we can elevate this conversation today. So we're able to come into Los Angeles, and we have money that we can spend as an organization, right? What are the choices we're going to make on where we spend our money? 100% of the DEI spend has gone with black and women-owned vendors here in Los Angeles. That's a choice that we made intentionally. We didn't have to do that. We have access to work with any vendor that we wish to work with. We made a deliberate choice. And so that's a small example of what we can do. Another example is having conversations with the National Black Bank Foundation. Another example is our partnership with 100 black men and 100 black women. What can we do, and how do we use the platform of sport to help shape a world that is brighter tomorrow than it is today? And that's why building bridges to prosperity requires all of our participation.
Sola, if I could just jump on what you just said about how we can utilize sport to make this particular change. Again, it was mentioned earlier that I work with Jason Wright, the first black president of an NFL franchise. I'm so proud of Jason and the work that we've been doing. One of the things that he started with from his time at McKinsey was looking at the impact of supporting black businesses, not just for the black community, but for the overall society and the positive impact it can have on society. So from day one, the charge from Jason has been, how are we more inclusive in every decision, every business decision that we make, who we bring into the fold to support the organization from a service standpoint. So whether it's in the short term as we look at certain fixes for the organization, or we look long term at a new venue for the team and beyond, making sure that every step of that equation we're bringing in black and brown owned and other businesses, which will not only make a huge impact for them, but will make a huge impact for the entire community.
Derek, make sure we connect you with the architecture and project management firm in Nashville. Make sure you connect with Ashley on the black banking front. And these are the type of conversations that allow us to move our communities forward, because these create real jobs for people, what we're talking about, right? And so, and they have an impact in real lives, right? So we're talking a little bit theoretical, but really it's about the conversations that we have today can have a direct impact on people's lives, right, in a positive way.
And these organizations, though, I think we've heard it said, can't be, we're going to give you some crumbs, because the tallest building in Atlanta was built by an African-American contractor. Herman Russell built the tallest building in Atlanta. Herman Russell, again, is just one of those. Their firms, when we did the expansion of Hartsville, we had one African-American owned company got a $300 million contract. There are businesses out here across this country, female-owned, male-owned, African-American and Hispanic and Latino-owned businesses can do the work. But if you don't give them the opportunity, they'll never be able to make it. And so this partnership, just as we're working with other entities in sports, and what everybody's got to do is hold everybody accountable. That's important. When Tony Ressler bought the Hawks, he came in because the former owners, and I'd spent a lot of time with ESPN and New York Times and all, really, and I'll call it Danny Ferry and all, I shot them down because they're going to take the attitude that because more black people were coming to the game than white folks, their money was still green. Their money paid the bills. And so you're concerned that when you got too many black folks coming. Arthur Blank said, I want every citizen and all my black brothers and sisters are welcome to come to the Falcons game and now to the Atlanta United game. It's about ownership, it's about leadership, but at the same time, if we don't speak up and speak out, and people will tell you, you come in Atlanta, wherever I go, if you got a bad behavior, I'm gonna call you out. And in business, I don't care. I'm not worried about whether I'm gonna lose business. My soul will never be, my heart and my personality and all will never be sold based on a dollar.
Right.
And that's what's missing in a lot today from our generations and our leaders. Two people, as Maynard Cohen years ago called scared Negroes. People get in position to make a difference, and they're afraid to speak up and speak out. If we don't speak up and speak out, we're slaves to everybody else. And so for me,
come on, Tommy,
I tell them up front, if you don't want me to have the business, that's fine. I'll go get it somewhere else. But I will never compromise my beliefs because my family, my parents taught me that. My mentors taught me that, and looking at the leaders, and I look at what we had then and today, we've got to change that. And what I admire about our young hip-hop community, and a lot of those young leaders take that position. And that's why we work hand in hand with the hip-hop community. I'm 71 years old, but they invite me in because you know why? I don't mind sitting at the table. I believe in them. I support them, and leaders have to understand there's a time to lead, there's a time to follow, and there's a time to get the hell out of the way, and some people don't get out of the way of themselves in our community.
Now it feels like we're in the barbershop, right?
Yes.
Go ahead on, Tommy.
We got there, right?
And real quick, because I want to start with a question, but go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I love that, right? And I think what's crucially important, especially tying it back to being a player in the professional sports world and lens as well as soccer here in America, right? You know, when I'm coming into the game, originally, soccer is not as prolific as it is now. You know, on many platforms, especially in the black community, it's a joke to talk about how little you understand or know about the game, right? That's okay. The players who were in did it because they loved the game, they were invested in it, and they invested their time into it, because for sure it wasn't because the money was there, okay? So I think what's extremely important to understand, especially when we're having these platforms and bringing this together, you know, the hashtag is together there will be change, right? We saw this as an opportunity to do this beyond ourselves, next generation, generational wealth. We talk about that, but what does it look like? And it looks like moments like you're speaking about, speaking up for what's right, even if it's at the expense of what you have in the moment, right? Because time will tell. Cream rises to the top. And I think a big issue within the professional sports world is a lot of these players never imagined to be able to have access to the amount of financial, mentor, and windfalls. And now they're in a position where a word you speak can devastate your brand and your future and your ability to provide for your friends and family and those who are relying upon you in a boardroom, in a contract, that in the locker room, it's seen as weakness to admit that you don't know or you're not sure. So not all skills translate into the boardroom, and that's where players tend to be exploited, especially from media, and they're much more hesitant to want to speak up or speak out, mainly because they don't have the luxury of being able to make mistakes and having the time to recover from those mistakes. Just as you had mentioned in the black community, one-time service is poor, that's it. Written off, never again. But other institutions, you're giving
over and over,
repeated chance after chance after chance. I mean, if you have chance after chance after chance, you're going to find success eventually. That's the goal, and that's what we're discussing when it comes to equity, equal access, opportunity. It's opportunity to make the same number of mistakes, but have the same level of resource, same level of connection, same level of network. And with that said,
love that.
I want to open the floor up now for questions. Got a microphone here. Got a question? Somebody has a question. There we go. And say your first and last name for us and tell us where you're from.
Hi, Mark Alexander, Oakland, California. I'm the National Secretary for 100 Black Men of America. I want to congratulate you all. I'm grateful for all of you sharing your insights. But I would like to just say that the wealth drain that we see in our communities is often attributed to poor health in the community. And black children have some of the worst, the most abysmal health and fitness that any young person in this country has experienced. Many public school districts in this country have abandoned physical education. What can Major League Soccer do to reverse this trend?
Sola?
So I'll take the question. I'll just talk first from personal experience. So I'm also a licensed clinical therapist, right? So when we talk about well-being, we're talking about both emotional well-being as well as physical well-being, right? And so I think that being able to be active and to be able to move is very important, right? And so I think the commissioner talked about we've created over 600 soccer pitches around the country. It's fine to be able to have a place for kids to play. We have to create a reason for them to want to do that. We have to have role models who inspire both on the field and off the field. So we're committed to doing all that we can. We have a platform called MLS Next. We have over 13,000 kids participating in youth sports at an elite level. That's comprehensive training, comprehensive playing at an elite level. And so Major League Soccer is looking at everything that we can do from the first moment that a kid touches a soccer ball until they become a professional soccer player. It starts with mentorship. What are we putting in our bodies, right? What we eat, I think we said what we see we become, but also what we eat we become, right? So we have to be able to have healthier foods in our community. We have to be able to, poverty is a disease, right? We have food deserts that we have to make sure that we take care of. That's the importance of having black banks and institutions in communities to continue to build businesses. If kids can't eat healthy food, right, then they're going to continue to lag behind in school because there's a direct correlation between their physical health and the way that they perform academically.
Mark, if I could, I think it's a great question. If you don't mind, I'll broaden it a little bit beyond the health equation. Back in 2014, I was part of the group that under the Obama administration started My Brother's Keeper, and I had the fortune of leading the sports segment of MBK. And our mission at that point in time was, in particular for young black and brown boys and eventually, girls, how can we improve their outcomes? And it did start with school, and it started with issues around health. And so your question is, how can a league, not just MLS, but even beyond, and teams help? There are opportunities for both leagues and teams to contribute to the communities in various ways. One of the things we did, and going back to black ownership, and we sort of started this, and how does this help the community? I'll take the Charlotte Hornets, which happen to be owned by a black owner, Michael Jordan, who have a black team president in Fred Whitfield. When we made the call to MJ and to Fred to say, we'd love for you all to contribute to this program to help schools and kids in Charlotte, North Carolina, it was a very easy decision for them. They understood inherently, because of who they were, the challenges in the community. So for them to support to write a check, whether it was to work with a group like Communities in Schools that wanted to make sure that kids were even prepared for the school day, that they had the clothes they needed, they had food so that they could come into school at the beginning of the school day and actually focus on the work that they were there to do, or it was to get another resource to help them with college preparedness. They were a group that early on understood that it's important for them to not just have a player show up at a school one day, but to actually have long-lasting impact through resources that can help to get there. And so whether it's a league or teams, certainly within the MLS community, but beyond, that opportunity exists, and I think that we all need to take more advantage of it.
And Dr., I want to also, because when Quincy and I were talking earlier, he's moving to the Oakland team, and I said, look, my Bay Area chapter has a program. They're looking to get more young people into soccer, but more important, exercise. The first thing Quincy said, count me in, I want to be a part. But see, and we would like to open the door for all of the various MLS teams and the players to come and partner with our chapters and partner with other community organizations, because one, it builds more support and interest in the sport. But more importantly, you know what it takes for conditioning for you to be able to have the longevity. And so Dr. Alexander was one of the persons I said I wanted to make sure you met while we're here. So I'm going to connect you two, but the other good thing is Quincy has a whole network of his colleagues that we want to make sure they're engaged and involved, and that's going to be important. And as I look at people, like, I sing the praises of LeBron James every day. Because LeBron not only puts his money in, he's personally involved, but I've seen a lot. When Doc Rivers was in Atlanta, Dominique Steele, Dikembe Mutombo, but we want to have that same kind of movement from all of the professional sports and having people with the like-mindedness that Quincy brought, where they want to engage in the community. So we got to extend the invitation and then welcome them in to be a part of what we're doing, but they can help us. And that's going to be important because, again, the same thing in business. What good is wealth without your health? And when we look at what happened with the COVID-19 and this pandemic, our communities were devastated because of preconditions. People said, oh, it was just racism because folks couldn't go to the hospital. Racism has played a lot in terms of quality health, but this whole issue, again, for us is black folks taking care of themselves and their children from cradle to the grave. And that's what we've got to do. I'm down 30 pounds, but I finally learned how to understand a meal without meat is a meal. But you have to learn those things.
I think a lot of us are still trying to learn that.
You look good, brother.
We got a question that we don't want to get to in the back with Quincy. I will warn you, if you stand around him for 1 minute, he's going to put you to work. So keep that in mind.
He already has. I know. How he set that up.
I saw that right there. We got a brother in the back. Say your first and last name and tell us where you're from.
Clinton Yates, ESPN. My question is for Sola and Quincy, which is, it seems that all of you all, a lot of what you all have talked about from sort of an entry point into the league and community relations, either from the player standpoint or from the building standpoint. I'm wondering what you guys think about interfacing from those that want to be a part of the soccer world in your league who don't play and do not construct things, but simply want to be a part of your league from a working standpoint, just as a professional path. Where are you guys on that in terms of what you do now and what you will do going forward?
So I would like for Major League Soccer to be viewed as an organization that's a great place to work. We are looking at policies now that examine how we take our players from playing on the field into more corporate positions. I'm the first senior black executive in the league's 26-year history. And so hopefully that's a model for people to say, you know, that's a place where I can succeed, right? Because why would people of color want to come and join an organization unless they see individuals in positions of influence and say, you know, if he can do it or if she can do it, then I can do that too. So hopefully my presence creates a sense where, you know, Major League Soccer is a great place to work, and Major League Soccer also does good things. And so we don't have specific programs at this point in time, right? But hopefully just these type of conversations, Clinton, right? You being able to build a relationship with me begins to open up doors of opportunity for people. I'm always accessible to people. My team is always accessible to people. And so we will create pathways with 100 black men. We will look for opportunities with 100 black women where we could say, oh, you know what, soccer's a place where, not just on the field, but I can say, oh, I want to work there. The work that Derek does in terms of the Global Sports Business Academy, bringing people together from across the sports industry, young people to be exposed to mentorship and people who are in positions of power, that's the opportunity for us to continue to build bridges and invite people in. So we're always about creating as large of a tent as possible. Did that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll dovetail on what you said about our work with, you know, GSB Academy, is providing programs that would potentially teach young people more about the business of soccer to prepare them for these roles, whether or not it's at the team level or the league level. There's a lot of opportunity for that, and we've gotten some of our former students and opportunities at networks and other leagues and teams. So Clinton, hopefully that helps, and we can always connect back in DC.
And Quincy, quickly, because we want to get some of the questions in, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, so I appreciate that question a lot, and I want to tie it as quickly as possible because I know we're going on a lot of different paths. But specifically in terms of being a platform accountability and responsibility, right? Typically, communities are exploited for their resources because those communities don't understand the value of the resources that they're being exploited for, right? I'm Nigerian American, right? I've spent time back home with my family, and a positive experience for me when I first go back home to Nigeria when I'm 9 years old is seeing what actual poverty looks like, right? Tangibly being there, having family members who will work 20-hour days and will do more work in one day than I could imagine to do in a month's time. And I can come back here and I can hear my peers complain about, having to walk from their house to the bus as opposed to not getting picked up from where they were, right? And it was a decision I had made for myself to say, listen, I cannot and I will not ever tell my father that anything is too difficult because I know I'd be lying to his face, right? And I believe making that decision, now looking back on my experience, especially over my time in MLS, I had over 11 years in the MLS, and at times was probably advocating too hard for communities I felt were being taken advantage of during my time. Before we formed BPC, before we had platforms, and before we had a representative at the executive level in MLS, we had to figure it out on our own and by ourselves because that's how the system was at that point in time. And I don't say that negatively, I say that with positivity because it allowed me and afforded me the opportunity to develop the skill sets to understand the business side of it, the entrepreneur side, also understanding the importance of mentorship and education. So when we're really talking about building bridges, I'm thinking of also the bridges to the untapped experience of the former Black and brown players who came before us, who are of great insight, who have not been properly valued, in my opinion, right? But I also see that corporations now can see that there are untapped markets and ways in which they can generate a huge return in ROI on these individuals who have a plethora of experience. For me,
and Quincy, you got to wrap it up. I gave you 30 seconds.
You're right. For me, I think the core of it all, right, is securing this in contracts, in deals that showcase and are easily understood by everyone at every level so they can, as they grow up, you had mentioned that you were mentored, didn't know where you were starting out at 19 years old, but you had someone who could look after you and make sure the contract was one that you could reflect back on in the future and educate and understand the importance of that. I appreciate all that.
All good.
I'm soaking in everything from everybody because this is my first time and opportunity to be in a position like this, and I hear everything that everybody's coming from, but I guess in terms of what BPC is and why it's been so influential and important is because we're a platform of accountability, but we also see and understand that bridges take time to build. Infrastructure takes time to build, and time is something that players of color haven't necessarily had. But now we do, and we want to maximize the time that we have. So I appreciate you.
No, all good. And I'm just giving you crap. We appreciate
no, it's all good.
There's always one Quincy in every barbershop, and everybody's like, "Come on, Quincy, get the part out," No, but you're good. You're good. I got another question in the back to my right. Go ahead.
Hey guys, I hope everyone can hear me. I'm gonna give Quincy another chance to hit some bars.
Love that.
So the conversation has been around equity. I really appreciate all your insights. I just want to bring it back to soccer and then ask Sola and Quincy and the rest of the panel to chime in. But what does equity from a soccer perspective and within Major League Soccer mean to you guys? And when we have a semblance of equity, or when we get there, what would that mean for you, or what would Major League Soccer look like?
You want to go ahead?
So I'll go quickly. So we've laid out a series of strategic commitments for diversity, equity, inclusion for the league. How do we expand the diversity of our player pool? How do we expand and invite in the diversity of our fan base? How do we expand the diversity of our ownership? How do we create equitable access and opportunities to businesses? How do we create an environment of well-being for all that are within our ecosystem? How do we elevate issues of racial, economic, and social justice, all of which are key and a pillar to what we do? So what will Major League Soccer look like? It will look like there will be more women in positions of power in Major League Soccer. It will look like that there will be more owners of color in Major League Soccer. It will look like we won't have to be having conversations of diversity, equity, and inclusion. At my first ownership meeting, I shared 26 years ago, the league is 26 years old. We weren't using the word diversity, equity, and inclusion. It wasn't in our lexicon. My hope is that 26 years from now, we're not talking about diversity, equity, inclusion. We're having a conversation about business, right? And good business means that we invite everybody to the table who has their own unique perspective and can contribute. And so my hope is that there will be more people of color. We have the largest Latino fan base in all of Major League Sports. We need more Latino executives who are running our teams, who are making decisions in our boardrooms. We need more people like Ali Curtis, who are in positions of power, who are running our teams. Not because of the color of the skin, but because they're good at what they do. And so it's really about access and opportunity, and we will do everything we can day in and day out to remove barriers to access and create intentional reasons for people to contribute to the sport of Major League Soccer.
Yeah.
I'll jump in there, just in the sense that it means so much to have Sola where he is, okay? I wouldn't be on this stage if it wasn't for, at our foundation, the National Black Bank Foundation, one of our board members is Dr. Bernice King. Dr. Bernice King, for those that don't know, is the youngest daughter of Martin Luther King Jr., the CEO of the King Center. When we created the Black Bank Foundation, Dr. King called me and said, Ashley, I want to join your board because my father's last speech before he was assassinated was about the banking and movement and how we could bring our dollars back to our community and how corporations of goodwill could do that as well. And so when you talk about corporations of goodwill, that means a corporation that means well, but is also willing to act well. And when you look at Major League Soccer, if Bernice hadn't been able to call Sola, who's her friend, and say, Sola, we need to have a conversation about how we can educate MLS, about how they can take the money they make from black and brown bodies and put it back in black and brown communities. If he's not there, that conversation doesn't happen. So it's about putting the right people in the right seats with the right ears and the right heart, and then having him report to a commissioner who believes in him, who will put him in a position to hear us. We cannot be heard unless people like Sola sit at these chairs. And so no matter what sport it is, no matter what company you belong to, no matter where you work, there has to be a Sola there. There has to be a commissioner there that lets this conversation happen.
I think that's a good point, and tying it into the question from Amir over there is, I think, the steps that were necessary to get to a position where Sola could have a position of influence and the ear of the commissioner. I think that's on the backs of a lot of the players who came before us and the experiences we had.
Absolutely.
And when asked what equity looks like, it looks transparent. It looks easy to understand at every level. I understand the complexity of the league and the necessary mechanisms that were put in place from a business perspective and sense. It makes sense. But investors, owners, future people who want to come into soccer because they see the upside potential, the long-term value that will be gained for every dollar invested now relative to the other established marketplaces, this is the ground floor. And it tends to be, those are the times where those who are most long-term thinking, no one can get in. And that's the moment in time where we want it to be clearly understood by everyone at every level, so they all have equal access to understanding what's in place and how it's secured. And that comes down to mentorship, education. It touches at every level. And for Sola's position to come into place comes into the players coming together and no longer fearing repercussions for what happened actions or not caring what happens as a result of it. That leads us to Players Coalition, where we now are connected with the social justice arm of the NFLPA, an extension of it. They're an independently ran organization.
Okay, I'm looking at Quincy trying to like roll my eyes just a little bit at him.
Yes, but my main thing is saying it's all of those collective experiences at every single step of the way that came into this. And for me, it's most important to make it clear and transparent. That's what it looks like.
Okay. The final comments from our chairman, who is responsible for my being here.
Well, first of all, let's give it up to my mentee. Everywhere he's been, I told him I was watching him on TV this morning, and no, I'm not going to ask for your autograph unless you're putting some $100 bills that you're signing them on. But this again, is just the first step. Mm-hmm. And I want to thank the commissioner, but I want to also thank two solid brothers that I had the opportunity to talk to too, because their passion for where we are and where we're going. I know it's reflected through a lot of the players, even with owners, and even meeting Marty, who's a close friend of one of the founders of 100 Black Men, and the family, Jackie Robinson and David Dinkins, and it was a total of 100 Black Men that started this great organization in 1963. It's about us taking the efforts, the first steps, but continuing. And so this won't be the last time, and we hope we'll continue this in dialogue. But the one thing that's important with the challenges we have today, people have to have open and honest dialogue and have to confront the issues. I hear people say that was in the past. Well, we see the past raising its old ugly head over and over again. It's until we as a society begin to address these issues and understand that we will not tolerate anybody being mistreated and left behind in this nation. And so I've enjoyed Major League Soccer. Yeah. My grandson went to St. John on a 4-year scholarship in soccer, and I've watched how it's grown in our community in Atlanta, but throughout the country. And I always say, when I saw Pele years and years ago, my attention went straight there, and that again is back to what they see is what they'll be. More and more young people, the more the owners, and I want to thank the owners that are here, the more the owners venture into the community, the more the players in the community, the more the administrators are in the community, then that's going to be better for the sport. And we will look for internships. It's important. Let these young people come in and learn the system. Let them come in and see how it operates. It's not just about money. Money can be given today and gone tomorrow. It's really when you make a real investment. And so with that, we want to thank everybody who listened in, but we need to all understand we're at a critical time in this nation, and we don't want to leave without the whole court addressing in 2 minutes this whole issue of COVID-19. And I want to commend Dr. Mark Alexander and our Health and Wellness Committee and what we're doing. I got both vaccines in January. I'm going to get the booster next month. Again, if we don't begin to stand and take ownership, and I hope we get the vaccine. I don't have extra arms. I didn't grow any extra eyes and all of that. But the vaccine didn't just happen a few months ago. This has been in the makings for over a decade, from when SARS first hit and Ebola and all of those. Even though we had a nation's leader who quit federal funding, private sector funding continued. And Moderna had an African-American female head of the research team. But we've had vaccines all over, from polio, from chickenpox and all. So we need people to understand this is one of the greatest challenges that we've had from pandemics back to the 20s when we had to deal with influenza. This is going to be around for years. And now our young people are dying and being in hospital even more than the last few weeks than anybody else. So we've got to make a difference. Sports won't matter. Your jobs won't matter. None of this will ever matter unless we address the challenge before us now, health and wellness. And so when someone says, and that's where I am, I don't need the vaccine because God's got me. Well, God sent him the vaccine, and God said, take the vaccine and stay around here instead of all of this stuff about I'm waiting to see. So with that, and Major League Soccer's made a commitment, if you look at what they've done with protocols here this week. So with that, we can make a difference, people. It's up to all of us. We want to stay safe. I want to live to see my grandchildren grow up and walk down the aisles. I want to see them get their soccer scholarships and be owners of soccer clubs. And I want to see them do everything as I know you do. So with that, we want to stay safe. We want to make sure we are pushing and working so that all of these great things we enjoy, we got to have our health to be around to continue to enjoy those. So we thank you for your effort. We want to salute Major League Soccer for its efforts. And remember, it's a start. It's not the end. And we want to keep this going. And Sola, let me tell you, I salute you. Thank you for your leadership, Quincy. Thank you for your leadership to all of the panel. And my man, keep doing it on the screen.
My light-skinned brother right here.
But you do it behind the screen, and that's why we want to say to all of you, we can make a difference. We've been blessed to be where we are with what we have, but we have to share those blessings. There's so many following behind us, and we have to make a difference, and that's why we are where we are today, because people are past the blessings. I hope we'll continue to bless others and work hand in hand. And in closing, there are those of our color who are not of our kind, but there are those of our kind who are not of our color. So you don't judge people by the color of their skin. But one thing I learned, that when swimming in shark-infested waters, treat all unidentified fish as sharks.
All right, love it, love it. I want to thank our viewers on the West Coast. Thank you. Also thank everybody on the East Coast, and thank you. Let's give it up for Sola one time. My man Derek representing DC. Ashley, the bank man. Quincy, my favorite guy that I had to pick on all day. Quincy. Hey. And also the chairman. Let's give it up for the chairman.
What's up?
This time again, thank you for coming. Take a little time to enjoy each other, exchange numbers, and build and build and build. Take care.
All right.